Thanks very much. I will stand for as long as I can stand it, and then please forgive me if I sit down. I decided that this is quite early in the day to start drinking, really, even on a Saturday, even though it's a lot later than sometimes I'm required to taste and spit for professional purposes. So I thought we needed something light and refreshing, and I didn't even know it was going to be this beautiful weather. This is perfect weather for German wine, which is never particularly alcoholic and is often very refreshing. So that's why I thought German wine was a good idea. But I do know that some people are by no means crazy about German wine. So I thought I'd start with a little poll, a pre-tasting poll. Stick up your hand if you know and like German wine. Oh, well, you're all converted, doesn't matter. Stick up your hand if you think you don't like German wine very much. Very brave, okay? And who's kind of neutral and waiting to be convinced? Good. So it's not a complete waste of time. Now, another question. Who remembers Black Tower? And Blue Nun, was it? Yes. Blue Nun was actually a lot better than Black Tower. They did put a lot of effort into making Blue Nun probably the least objectionable Liebfraumilch. Liebfraumilch was a really strange animal that was completely unknown in Germany, but exported in massive quantities to the UK and the US. And as I've written in my column today, by coincidence, today is the day in New York when the wonderful man, actually, who dreamt up Blue Nun as a commercial entity, Peter Max Sichel, his memorial is being held by his family in New York today, and he died at the age of 102, drinking a lot of wine. So, the German climate used to be very unfriendly to ripening grapes. It was cold. Many years, the grapes didn't ripen properly at all. They were sort of hard green berries that yielded a lot of acidity, not much fruit. And so to actually sell the stuff abroad in quantity, they dreamt up these drinks like Liebfraumilch, where they added a lot of sweet stuff, which would be unfermented grape juice, to counterbalance that acidity. But it wasn't good quality sweet stuff. It was like sweetener, basically. And it didn't really have much flavor in the middle. It was sort of sweet and sour, and often too sweet, because the predominant grape was called Müller-Thurgau, and it didn't have much acidity. It was what, in wine terms, we used to call flabby. So these were not very satisfactory wines, to put it mildly. And I remember people used to dismiss them as sugar water. But we all know the climate has changed enormously. And like England and Canada, Germany has been one of the chief beneficiaries of climate change in wine terms. And it's actually even got to the stage now where some grapes in some German vineyards actually get sunburn, which is amazing. Is this music throughout the thing? It's not just here, right? It's there, fine. I just asked to turn off. It's done. Anyway, the upshot is, no, you don't have to do anything about it. It's just, if it was just here, I was going to ask them to turn it off. No, I wouldn't dream of imposing my will on the whole thing, no. So now, miraculously, grapes ripen fully in Germany, which has engineered a complete sea change in the style of German wine. And it no longer has to be artificially sweetened to be nicely balanced. The grapes get proper, genuine flavor and ripeness, and enough sugar in the grapes to ferment out to dryness, and which is the fermentation thing that converts sugar in grapes to alcohol. And we now have a whole host of really nice dry German wines, of which our first 4 wines are made to be dry. Wines 4 and 5 have a little bit of residual sweetness, but that is beautifully balanced with the natural acidity in them. So I think you won't go, ugh, sweet wine. I mean, I know that sweet wines are not fashionable, but I don't think you will find these unpleasant, any of them. And then, finally, wine number 6 is red, as you will have noticed. And Germany is now producing some really exciting red wine. I remember when I first went to Germany in the late 70s, their red wines they weren't red. I mean, they were a sort of pale, pinkish grey, because the grapes generally rotted, and which destroyed the colour in the skins, and that was the greyness. And they were sort of, again, sweetened up. They were dire, really. But now, a lot of Burgundy fans, fed up with the prices of red Burgundy, are filling their cellars with German Pinot Noir, which is known as Spätburgunder, as you can see on your mats. Today's tasting will offer, as Harriet said, a tour. It's a combination of different regions, different styles, 2 colors, and 3 grapes. All of the wines are available from Ripley Wines, who have supplied them, which is one of the major specialists in German wine, have a lovely portfolio. And I will tell you the prices at the end, but I want to have a little poll at the end, as usual, as to your favorite wine. So I don't like to tell you what the prices are at the beginning. And also, on your tables, you will see a little voucher for a discount on membership of the 25-year-old JancisRobinson.com. On the 1st of December this year, we celebrate the 25th anniversary of my wine website and the 50th anniversary of when I started writing about wine. It just happens to coincide. Been around a long time. So do take these with you, and if you don't want to take advantage, but you have a wine lover in your life, give them the voucher. So, first white wine is the only non-Riesling, and it's the Silvaner grape, which you don't find anywhere much apart from occasionally in Alsace and in this central German region, Franken, or Franconia in old-fashioned English. It's actually in Bavaria, and so in beer country. But Silvaner is the grape, although they grow some Riesling, Silvaner is what they're best at. And you can see it's actually got quite a deep color, deeper than the Rieslings. It's only 12.5 alcohol. That's the great thing about all these wines. None of them are desperately heavy. And the whole climate in Franken has warmed up considerably, even though it's very continental, because it's way to the east. And apparently, the last year when it was difficult to ripen grapes fully in Franken was 1996, which is some time ago. You may wonder unless you're a German speaker, you may wonder what Erster Gewächs is. The German wine community has a great respect for Burgundy. And so they decided that they would rewrite their vineyard classification as a sort of copy of Burgundy. So they have the best sites are either Premier Cru, or the very best sites are Grand Cru. And the translation for that is Erster Gewächs is their Premier Cru sites, and Großes Gewächs, which we get to with wine number 3, is a Grand Cru site. So here's a Premier Cru, and Schäfer means a shepherd, apparently. And I wrote, when I initially tasted the wine at Ripley's tasting in April, creamy, intense, and do taste it, by the way. Creamy, intense, and should appeal to those who don't like Riesling, because I do, and it's almost rich. I think Silvaner generally is known as a relatively neutral grape, but actually I think this has a lot of concentrated flavor to it, and I think would go really well with quite a lot of food. When I tasted, I had a second taste just now, a few months afterwards, and they've given me this thing, which I'm sure is very, very good, but here we go. No, I can't find someone who can help me here. Page 1, that's not coming back. Maybe if I do that. Yes. I thought it's quite full-bodied, and a little bit like Pinot Blanc, actually, if any of you know that, which you find a lot, Pinot Bianco in Alto Adige or Pinot Blanc in Alsace. A sort of wine that I feel, sometimes people ask me to suggest wine for parties, and it's got to be a wine that no one will object to, no excessively strong flavor. And I quite often suggest Pinot Blanc, or this, I think, would do the trick. It's not especially aromatic, but it's very nicely balanced. And the quality of it, I think, really comes across on the finish. You notice once you've had a mouthful, it lasts a nice long time. But it's not heavy. It's got a kind of nice tingle to it. So I would be happy to drink this anytime over the next 4 years, really, 3 or 4 years. And they do actually last quite well, these Franken Sylvanas. I must take my watch off so I don't go over time. I better rapidly go on to wine number 2, which is the first of our 4 Rieslings. And it's not surprising that there's so much Riesling here, because Riesling is the signature grape of Germany. And I went on the record a very long time saying I think Riesling is the greatest white wine grape in the world. If ever anyone says to me, gosh, it must be quite a burden to have power in the world of wine, I say I've been enthusiastic about Riesling for nearly 50 years, and it's still a struggle to sell German wines. So I really don't have much power. But I am still a huge fan of Riesling, not just because it's never heavy. It's always refreshing because it's naturally high acidity. It's very, very good at transmitting terroir, at transmitting place. The wines really vary according to the conditions where they're planted. And the wines made from Riesling last so much longer than anything made from Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay. Hugh Johnson and I once did a tasting in Germany where we chose pairs of wines from the same vintage. One would be a Riesling, a German Riesling, and the other would be a red Bordeaux, a smart red Bordeaux. And the German Rieslings outlasted the red Bordeaux. And so do remember, if you buy Riesling, you don't have to hurry to drink it, unlike a Sauvignon Blanc you generally do. And even an oak Chardonnay can be a lovely wine, but it's much more difficult to match to food than Riesling, especially the sort of foods that we like, so many of us like nowadays, sort of refreshing, spicy, not too heavy, not too, not the creamy sauce, but the kind of texture and things like that. So Riesling is a natural food partner, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a red wine, a sort of heavyweight, meaty course. What else do I want to say? Oh, yes. Now, so that is Riesling itself, and we come on to the first nice pale Riesling from the Knevitz brothers, Tobias and Björn. And they are the latest members of this outfit called VDP, where you can see up in the top right-hand corner of your tasting mat, all the wines that we have today are made by producers who belong to this elite group of German wine producers. And the VDP have very kindly assembled all these wines and made sure that we had them today. And so it's always worth looking on a label, a German wine label, for that logo of the VDP. I'm not saying that there aren't some very good producers who are not members of the VDP, but it's not the case that it's an exclusive club, but it can guarantee you a definite superior quality. And the Knabitzes, obviously, they're always recruiting new people. And these brothers, who are way, way, way up at the northern end of the Rheinhessen region, which is south of the Rheingau, just across the Rhine River from the Rheingau, obviously were making such good wine that they were invited to join the VDP. Now, a crucial word here in the name of the wine is trocken, which is German for dry. And so if you want to make sure that you get a dry German wine, do look for the word trocken. This is 13%. So the grapes were obviously quite ripe. And Rheinhessen is a really interesting region. It was the one that supplied most grapes for the dreaded Liebfraumilch way back in the 70s and 80s. But there's been a huge revolution, and a new generation has come into play, determined to make top quality wine. And the most famous bit of Rheinhessen, sort of around Nierstein on what's called the Rheinfront, the kind of red cliffs leading straight down to the Rhine. And that's in the far east, sorry, I don't have a map, far east of the Rheinhessen. But actually in the far southwest, there was this group of not newcomers, newly inherited family estates, thinking of names like Keller, Klaus-Peter Keller, and Philipp Wittmann. And they started showing what their southwest corner of Rheinhessen could do once yields were cut way below the sort of productivity that was expected of people buying fruit for cheap Liebfraumilch, and making individual single vineyard sites. Then, of course, lots of young people worked with them, left them, set up on their own. So there's this great nucleus of top quality wine coming from particularly southwest Rheinhessen. But these two brothers are up in the far north, actually almost on the Rhine when it's flowing east to west as opposed to south to north. Sorry, I really should have made sure that I had a map. I beg your pardon. On limestone and lime. Oh, there is a map. Great. Sorry. Thank you. As a map in your VDP brochure. Thank you very much indeed. Limestone. It's an interesting thing. This soil and wine. If you read through the sort of tech spec of most wines and most wine publicity, you'll see there's a massive dependence and massive quantity of words given to the soil and the rocks underneath the soil. We in the kind of tight-knit little world of wine, we decide that limestone gives wine a sort of special freshness. And I think this wine does have a special freshness. But there's a great new book by a very eminent geologist who also makes wine called Professor Alex Maltman, Maltman. And in his book, he points out very eloquently why the exact sort of rock actually doesn't make a blind bit of difference to the taste of the wine, thereby completely shooting a lot of wine literature down to the ground. It's still a moot point. Some of us taste a wine from a volcanic soil and decide, it's kind of smoldering. And limestone, we still think has quite a bit of a tingle. But you see what you think. I trust that you've already tasted it. But I think they're very, very talented, these brothers. And I thought it had a sort of explosively fruity nose, a bit like a bouquet of spring flowers, and very crisp acidity, and a real concentration of mineral flavor. And again, very nice, lasts a nice long time in the mouth. I'm going to move on to our Großes Gewächs, our Grand Cru wine, because Großes Gewächs is the top of the tree as far as the new Germany goes. Großes Gewächs are from single sites that have denoted Grand Crus, and they're always from one of these. and they're always dry. And they're kind of new German wines ambassadors, if you like, to show, look, we can make great dry wine. And actually great dry wine that can last pretty well, too. This, Peter Jakob Kuhn, was, I think, the first biodynamic wine producer in Germany. He certainly is biodynamic now. He started off organic. Who knows what biodynamic means? Good, thank you. So it sounds ridiculous. The jobs in the vineyard and in the winery are done according to the phases of the moon. Each vineyard is tended with special, tiny quantities of special preparations made from things like chamomile, nettles, things like that. Ideally buried in a cow horn at the corner of the vineyard. Sounds completely ridiculous, but I would never claim to be able to tell an organic wine from a non-organic wine purely on how it tastes. But I have often identified wines from biodynamically grown grapes purely on the taste, because they do seem to have an extra energy. And a lot of scientists are very understandably skeptical, but you can actually see vineyards looking so much healthier with biodynamic viticulture. Perhaps it is simply that with biodynamics, the vigneron has to attend to each vine separately. It just has to put much more effort into looking after the vines. Goes without saying, no pesticides, no herbicides, no insecticides. And the current vogue, incidentally, we've gone organic, then we go on to biodynamic. The current vogue is regenerative, looking after the soil, which is a whole another topic, but perhaps one, who knows, we might talk about this time next year. Anyway, I think this wine has that kind of intense, sort of wildflower intensity that I do associate with biodynamically grown grapes. But it's also, I think, the most evolved of these wines, because 2020 was a very hot vintage and produced wines that were just a little bit lower in acidity than usual. So this, I think, has some of that smell of developed Riesling. It's not very, very old Riesling that was grown in a hot year can sometimes smell quite petrol-y. This isn't petrol-y, but it's kind of going there. 60-year-old vines. We all love old vines because they have had time to get their roots really, really deep into the soil, therefore don't need irrigation. They're comfortably settled in where they are, and the balance is right. The vine balance is right. So I like it. I found notes of lime in this wine, and I think I would drink it sooner than some of these other ones. But it has got great intensity, and it's 12.5% alcohol, that's all. It's from the Rheingau, which is the old-fashioned classic wine region, where the Rhine flows across the map from east to west, full of barges. It's one of the rivers that's still a really important industrial waterway. And the vineyards, south-facing, slope down to the Rhine, and this one actually almost touches the Rhine. I think it's got a kind of certain crystalline character to it. Dernhoff, I'm racing because I would love to have some questions at the end, and I'd like to make time for them. Dernhoff is one of my favorite producers and is a very, very popular producer within Germany. They're based in the Nahe, which is a region which is sort of halfway between the freshness of the Mosel, which is the coolest German wine region, and the Rhine, the warmer Rhine regions. And all the wines have a kind of raciness to them. This one is just 9%, really light, kind of feather light. And it's very typical. The vintage, it's the youngest wine we've got. And the German producers were very thrilled with the 23 vintage because it wasn't as hot as 22 and 20 and 19. 21 was a cooler vintage too. But 23's got a kind of raciness to it. And this, from a southeast-facing slope on slate, which is a Schiefer, which is a very typical soil type for Germany. It's very, very youthful and sort of very pure and well-defined. And in the old days, before German wine producers came up with this Großes Gewächs, erstes Gewächs classification of vineyards, instead of classifying vineyards, they used to measure the quality of wine by how ripe the grapes were, because it was difficult to get grapes ripe. Therefore, they valued ripeness in grapes. And they had this system, which were called predicats. And in fact, you can see that word in the top right hand of your map, predicat. They came up with these predicats, which started for superior wine, started with Cabinet, which was sort of quite ripe, then went to Spätlese, which meant late picked, a little bit riper, then Auslese, riper still, meaning individually picked. And then for really sweet wines, there were Beerenauslese, individual berries picked, and Trockenbeerenauslese, really, really sweet wines that had been affected by noble rot. And because when the Germans were sort of absolutely falling in love with dry wine, they rather overlooked these more old-fashioned categories and thought they were old-fashioned. And it was, the really high prices were for their new, fashionable, dry Großes Gewächs. But I'm glad to say there's been a little bit of a revision, and German wine consumers, too, have realized that what's special, what Germany can produce and nobody else can, is wines that are kind of feather light in alcohol, but have lots and lots of flavor, because they're far enough north for the grapes to hang on to the vine quite a long time before they're fully ripe. And there's quite a vogue at the moment for Cabinet wines, which is the least ripe, but really refreshing and racy, and a perfect aperitif. This one is actually quite youthful. Maybe ideally, I've got Cabinets in our cellar that are 20, 30 years old, and they're still very much alive. It's not a sin to enjoy this now, but you could put it away easily for 10 years. Now, the Dönhoffs are a very typical German wine business. It's very much a family affair. They've been here since 1761. Most of these outfits have been around for centuries, and it's just a question of the next generation coming. I don't know what you do if you're the next generation and you couldn't care less about wine, because they do seem to expect you to take over the business. This one was run very successfully by Father Helmut and Mother Gabby, great couple. I last saw Helmut at an international wine trade dinner here in London, which happens every other year. And he came buzzing over and he said, I just have to thank you so much, because the last edition of the World Atlas of Wine had a picture of me and Hugh Johnson, the co-authors, sitting in Hugh's beautiful garden with a bottle of Dönhoff in front of us. And he was so chuffed about that. I thought that was rather sweet. Because German producers, unfortunately, don't tend to travel very much. I'm always nagging them about that. They wonder why people don't buy more German wine. But they're not very active exporters. Most of them speak English, so I don't understand why they don't travel more. And perhaps they're shy or something like that. But honestly, there's about one German wine producer I can think of, Ernie Loosen, Loosen, who makes wine in Washington State as well, and other places, and Australia. And he's a real cosmopolitan character and a live wire and a very good public speaker. But otherwise, it's difficult to get a German vintner out of Germany. So I think they should travel more and convert more people to the joys of German wine. Anyway, in 2007, Helmut's fingers were sort of eased off the tiller, and their son Cornelius took over. And he has done great stuff. He's just carried on the family tradition. But nowadays, in the world of wine, honestly, wine is getting better everywhere, every year, just as the market, sadly, is shrinking. And you only stay in business if you make better and better wine every year. And that's what Cornelius is doing, and it's what all these producers are doing. And in Germany, anyway, they're being helped by the climate so far. It still isn't too hot. So I thought this was very pure, well-defined, fruity, with some of the currant leaf kind of aromas. It tastes like I wonder whether it was actually on the borderline for Spätlese, because they have very well-defined ripeness levels for each category. And I think these grapes got pretty ripe, but then there's that lovely acidity to keep it fresh and appetizing. Let me see what I thought this time. Yes, I used the word, when I retasting it today, very delicate, with real lift, sort of a filigree texture to it. It's so see-through and very flirtatious, the opposite of dense in a way, and kind of super clean, and no hurry at all to drink it. Then we go to page number 2 and come across our Spätlese, which is our oldest wine, along with the Silvaner. And it comes from the Mosel, which is an absolutely classic German wine region, which is, if there are German wine lovers in Britain, they tend to love the Mosel. And it is only 7% alcohol, because so much of the fruit has been retained in the wine of this late-picked Spätlese wine from the vineyard known as Niederberg-Helden, which slopes down towards the Mosel behind a very grand Victorian building, which is now a Marriott hotel, I discovered, which seems rather strange, run by Thomas Haag, son of Wilhelm Haag of the Fritz Haag estate. So this is featherlight, still very, very tightly wound, but it really would be a shame to drink it. You really should cellar it. But it's again, this balance of fruit and acidity. And then finally, I've just remembered I meant to finish at 1:45. Sorry. Finally, a red. Now, I suggested to this brilliant team here that they pour the red first because it was very important to keep the whites cool. And actually, by now, the red is just slightly warmer than I would choose to serve it. Especially a Pinot Noir, I think, deserves to be halfway to a white wine temperature because it's generally light-bodied. So forgive it because it's just maybe it's not quite as fresh as it would be if you were serving it at home. But I hope you'll agree it has a perfect, pure Pinot Noir nose, very perfumed, very aromatic. When the Germans first started to make serious Pinot Noir, they went mad, as so many people did, with ripeness and oak. And this Pinot Noir doesn't like that. It's a delicate grape. But nowadays, they've got everything in the right balance. This certainly isn't oaky, although I'm sure it was aged in oak. And it certainly isn't over-alcoholic. It's 13%. And Württemberg is down in the south, which next to Baden. So not around Stuttgart. So it's not surprising that that's where red wine production is centered, because in the south it's a little bit warmer. And the Christian Dautel, who looks he's got a real hipster beard, he typically went and got experience in 2 other places which are very good at Pinot Noir, Burgundy, obviously, and Oregon. So even though I say the Germans don't travel to sell, young ones are actually traveling to get winemaking experience, which is a very good thing and is reflected in the wine. This is on limestone and marl, which I'm sure you can taste. So, do we have any questions? But while you're working out which is your favorite wine, anyone, any questions? There is a mic there. And you were the person who knew what biodynamics was, weren't you? Yeah.
At the beginning, you mentioned a Müller-Thurgau, and I'm just wondering, in the new world of German wine, whether there's much blending of Riesling and Silvaner.
You mean blending with Müller-Thurgau?
I thought they were. That's what they were.
Oh, it was thought... Müller-Thurgau was a grape engineered by a Dr. Müller in Thurgau, I think, and for a long time, and it was engineered to ripen easily in cold climates. The result was it had far too little acidity to make it interesting to drink, the wine interesting to drink. And for a long time, Müller-Thurgau was thought to be a cross between Riesling and Silvaner. And in fact, in some parts of the world, it's still called Riesling Silvaner. But actually, thanks to our friend DNA, it was proved that it's not Riesling and Silvaner. I think it's Madeleine Angevine or something. Anyway, yeah. But no, I don't think any decent German wine producer would blend in anything as dull as Müller-Thurgau into wines such as the ones that we've had today. Although, interestingly, not everybody realizes this, EU rules in most appellations allow blending of 15% of something that isn't what's on the label, which is sometimes used by commercial bottlers. Any other questions before we vote? There's one.
Can you hear me? Given what you're saying about climate change and its effect on Germany, are there other grapes that are now being considered in Germany that weren't 10 years ago, like in Bordeaux and
absolutely.
other places?
There's quite a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, late ripening grape, but there's Cabernet Sauvignon grown in Germany now, and there's a big vogue for Chardonnay, which isn't all that late ripening, but Chardonnay was not seen as part of Germany's palate. But actually, there was a big New York Times rave article about German Chardonnay the other day, and Sauvignon Blanc as well. There's a rather nice one made by Oliver Zetter, I think, somewhere. Yeah, definitely. So, should we... one last question at the back there. And then we will vote.
Hi, thanks for your time. A question: as Germany becomes more popular, do you think that
I hope it will.
Well, but do you think that the powerhouses of Riesling and Spätburgunder are the future, or will regional grapes like Gelber Orléans, Silvaner become more popular?
I think as German wine does become more popular, then people, wine geeks will want something other than Riesling and Spätburgunder. They're the obvious ambassador, the obvious ones, but everyone loves a bit of, well, not everyone, but geeky people love a bit of novelty. So, yeah, there's definitely room for everything, I'd say, yeah. But there's no doubt Riesling and Germany are a pretty good match. So, have you, I hope, worked out your favourite wine? Whose favourite was the Silvaner? Okay. Whose favourite was the Knevitz, wine number 2? Good. Okay. And whose favourite was the 2020, number 3? Oh, lots. That's interesting. Thank you. This is a very impressionistic total here. Number 4, the Dönhoff, the young one. There's a nucleus here. And the Schloss Lisa, the very young filigree, that's pretty popular, isn't it? It's very classic, that one. It's a kind of, okay. And the red. It is a little warm. It's not being served in the best. I'm very protective about these wines and kind of. Okay, so I think it's pretty much a tie between wines 3 and 5. Maybe 5, just the classic just has the edge, which is rather nice because it's, a lot of Germans would think, oh, a Spätlese isn't as good, isn't as fashionable as a großes Gewächs. I'll just quickly tell you the prices, and then I have a final question for you. So wine number 1 from Ripley Wines is £30.31. Wine number 2 is £27.46. Wine number 3 is £53.71. Wine number... You see, I told you, großes Gewächs get the highest prices. Wine number 4, £26.39. Wine number 5... Now, this is crazy. Absolutely crazy, if this price is correct. This is only £21.41 for, something that's so difficult to make. I wonder whether that's the true price. Look it up on Ripley Wines. And then, I'm afraid, needless to say, the number 6 is the most expensive because it's red, and that's £49.06. So, final question. Of the people who either had no opinion about German wine or actually thought they didn't like it very much, actually, we can't... Are any of you converted? Stick your hand up. Good. Excellent. Job done. Good. Thank you.